and welcome. I'm so happy you could be here this evening. I'm so happy I could be here this evening. My name is Laura Flusche. I'm the Executive Director of MODA, which is the Museum of Design Atlanta. And I'm here this evening with my colleague, Tiffany Ricks, who is MODA's Community Engagement Manager and made this event happen. And I see another MODA colleague, Blair Bosley, on the call as well. Blair is one of our educators. So happy to be here with you too. At MODA, we define design as a creative process that inspires change, that transforms lives, and that makes the world a better place. And if there are two takeaways from that definition of design that are really powerful for us, they are the idea of design as process and the idea of design as an agent of change. Through our exhibitions and our programs, whether they're for adults, whether they're for kids, whether they're virtual or whether they're IRL, we're committed to sharing ways that designers can and are changing the world. And I'm honored to be here this evening with people who are doing that work. I admire the work of the people who are here with us this evening. Maurice Cherry is going to give us a proper introduction, but we are here with contributors to the book Black Experience in Design. And we are joined by contributors to the book who are coming to us from across the United States. Terrence, I'm sorry, please correct my
Moline.
Moline.
Yes.
And Mo, thank you for being here. And thank you also, Maurice Cherry. I'm really excited about this groundbreaking book. I'm excited about the conversation that we're going to hear this evening. And if you're in the Atlanta area and you need a copy of this book, I want to let you know you can pick one up in the MODA store. We are honored to be joined this evening by the man who is going to lead the conversation, Maurice Cherry. Maurice is a designer, a strategist, and the founder of the podcast Revision Path, on which he interviews Black designers and developers from across the world. If you don't know Revision Path, you need to. It's an amazing contribution to the field of design. It is also the first podcast to be included in the permanent archive of the Smithsonian National Museum of African American History and Culture. So kudos, Maurice. Thank you, Maurice, for guiding the conversation. I'm going to step back and hand the mic to you so you can introduce our speakers. And again, to all our speakers, thank you so much for being here. It's an honor.
All right, thank you, Laura, for that introduction. And thank you all for attending tonight. I think we're gonna have a really great conversation. First off, I wanna introduce the panelists that will be really guiding this conversation. I'm just sort of the intermediary here, but first off, we have Malene Barnett. Malene Barnett is an artist, designer, and activist, and the founder of the Black Artists and Designers Guild, a dynamic, action-oriented, member-driven platform for creative professionals seeking community, collaboration, and creative support. Next, we have Terrence Moline. Terrence Moline is an art director, designer, illustrator, and the founder of African American Graphic Designers, a collective of African American / Black designers who collaborate while growing as a family. And then also we have Maurice Woods. Maurice Woods is the executive director and founder of Inneract Project, an organization whose vision is to build a global design education platform for marginalized students of color. Maurice has over 20 years of experience across brand identity, retail, exhibits, and interaction design. So just to kind of start things off, this is a panel about community, so I'll be sort of throwing questions to the entire panel here. I want to start things off with having each of you talk about how you became involved with working on this book, Black Experience in Design. Like, what's behind your decision to contribute? Malene, you start.
Well, thanks, Maurice. Thanks for having me, MODA. Well, Maurice, it was the title. When I learned that there was a book that really was direct to an experience that I could relate to, Black Experience in Design, there was no question of whether or not to participate in the book. So, and I was really excited about the opportunity to just share an authentic experience, you know, and learning that it was coming from all facets of design, not just focused on one area. And plus, I knew it was something that was needed. And if I was in school, it was a book that I would have picked up, and it would have been very helpful during my design education.
Maurice, what about you? Should I be saying Mo instead? Mo?
No, you got me. I'm unmuting myself. You know how you're trying to like frantically unmute yourself and you can't find your mouse. So I think obviously the book title meant a lot to me. Over the years, I've studied a lot around Black aesthetics, so that was really important for me to have a contribution. But I think overall, just from a generational standpoint, it's important for us to catalog, record, and contribute to the sort of cultural connections and design contributions that Black people have contributed in this country and beyond. And I felt like, it was a good way for me to, do my part to continue that legacy of work that, that has been laid, before me, to be able to lay that on for a next generation of young designers. I was the same too, like when I came up through college, and, I was always slightly disappointed because I always saw books, whether those be, graphic design, visual design, explanations or examples, and then even written discourse around, design never really had that Black perspective. And so I thought it was just really important that this book come out and be supported, so that, folks like me that may be coming up and looking for that context were able to get it. So that's the reason why I was pretty excited to participate.
Yeah, I guess it's my turn. I'm so excited to be on this panel because I get to hear very intelligent answers like that and get to be last to follow up. So for me, it wasn't a choice. I just was presented with the opportunity from somebody who I think is amazing. Leslie and Noel reached out to me. And I had been having all of these ideas about the stuff that I wanted to catalog about the history of African-American graphic designers as it was. So I have all of these volumes of scattered thoughts, and it was like really the first time for me to put those thoughts together in an article. And it was way too important for me to pass up, period. And if they were gracious enough, and if I passed the test, the initial paragraph that we needed to get in, and they actually let me in the book, I was like, oh, it's gravy. So I was so happy to be in the book. My mom's happy that I'm in the book. So it was something that I felt was necessary. And I needed to do it for our community also, so that we can be formally recognized, right?
Right, absolutely. One thing I think that the four of us have in common is that we created communities with a focus on helping Black designers. But it's interesting because, you're kind of following different methods and frameworks to get to community, which we'll talk about later. Before that, I have a question for each of you, and Terrence, we'll start off with you. Was there a specific moment or experience that you had that sort of became the catalyst for starting your organization?
Yeah, it's a long story in several different parts. It started initially in New Orleans when I was in college and realized that there were so few African-American graphic designers in a primarily Black city. So I started reaching out to other graphic designers who were Black. I was politely stalking, trying to get us all together. And I think that the response initially was distrust, or they didn't mistrust, or they really didn't understand my intentions. And I just wanted to create something that I didn't have in college, which was a community of Black creatives that I can turn to. And after Katrina, people were reaching out to each other through Facebook. And the year after Katrina, it was an opportunity for me to really assess my life and think about the thing that I wanted to do in this year while everything was reshaping. So I took time to learn how to paint, oil paint, which was great, and time to look at what search engine optimization was and what social media was. And then putting all of those things together, I saw a clear path of getting African-American graphic designers together. That's the short version, but I will, hopefully that satisfied the question. And if I have more time, I can talk about it in more detail after.
Oh yeah, we'll get into that, absolutely.
Okay.
Malene, how about you?
Well, I think just to give context, I have a background in textile design, and I decided to focus on designing rugs. And you can imagine how many Black women are actually designing rugs. I was pretty much like the only one. And, you know, for a long time, I had been working in this industry around designing products for home, and just, of course, not feeling represented culturally, physically with with people around that look like me. And, you know, over the years, though, I've traveled around the world, specifically through the Black diaspora, always connecting with artists and designers. So I knew that we were out there. So I was always on a mission, like, you know, privately, I'd say, because this was before, you know, Instagram and Facebook. And so fast forward to 2017, when I decided to take a sabbatical from my business, because I'd become so frustrated with the industry and not feeling supported with my point of view, and creating work based on, you know, my clients' specifications, and they're not really embracing, you know, my point of view, which was always focused on the Black diaspora, African aesthetics when it came to design. So now that I am able to see the industry from afar, I was able to have a little bit of critical thought behind, like, the lack of, you know, our voice when it came to being the expert. I'll put it in quote, for certain opportunities, looking at the lists that come out for honors, you know, looking at who gets the projects. So there's a coveted event that happens every year in our industry, and it's called What's New, What's Next. Everyone in interior design industry knows about it. And it's full of panel discussions. And there was not one Black artist or designer on the panels, not one Black moderator. We were just not represented. And so that was the catalyst that said to me, okay, enough is enough. So what I did was, my mother always taught me, like probably many of our elders, work with what you have. And so I went to social media and I voiced my opinion about this particular event, and, you know, really called out that building, the organizers, and said, shame on you. So I did that on purpose because I wanted to see how the community felt. And so the community started to chime in, and editors from the magazines, and everyone's like, yeah, you're right, we're complicit, we need to do better. So hence, about 6 weeks later, I had already, once I'd made the post, I was already planning to, like, create a collective. And about 6 weeks later, I launched Badge in November of 2018, because that event was in September. So, and hence we started with 30 people, and I'll share more as we continue the conversation.
All right.
So I you know, when I started this, I mean, I never thought I was going to be starting a program, but my goal was to play basketball. You know, I was fixated on being an NBA player, and design was second. And I think what I learned through that whole process was just that, you know, first and foremost, fate is, you know, always wins. You know, you think that you're going to be doing one thing, and then you just never know what God has in plan for you, and, you know, things can change. And I think, like, for me, when I started Inneract Project, it really started out of a class. You know, I was in graduate school, and, you know, I was fortunate enough to get out of the hood and play basketball and get to a 4-year college and learn about design. And it was important for me to give back. It was just critical that other Black people knew about opportunities in design. So I simply just wrote a proposal in class, and man, I didn't think twice about it. I just wrote a proposal. I literally, you know, I was living in Seattle at that time, which doesn't have too many Black people there. And I just started driving into community centers in the Black parts of Seattle, and just start dropping off posters saying I was teaching a class. And that's how I started. And I had 3 students. And by the end of the summer, I had 30. And then, you know, it just sort of started to build from what was more of a grassroots organization into an organization that implemented various different strategies around volunteering and curriculum. And it just sort of exploded from there. But it was really sort of my experience as a young Black person and really trying to explore what does it mean to be Black in graphic design, and how can I use the skills and the knowledge that I have to pass that on to other Black people and provide them with the same opportunities that I have that they might not have, because, you know, I was blessed with height and some athleticism and able to make that leap. So that was really important for me, and that's the reason why I ended up starting Inneract Project, and that's what sort of carried me on, even carries me on to this very day.
I want to go back, Maurice, to that first year, because, you know, you founded Inneract Project like nearly 20 years ago. So first, just kudos to the persistence and the drive to keep this going for so long. But sort of paint a picture of what the design community was like back then. Did you find support from like the design community at large when you started?
You know, this is going to sound weird, but maybe it's not going to sound weird. I had support from the design community. I don't think I had support from the Black community when I first started off. It wasn't that necessarily that they didn't like the fact that I was working with, you know, obviously Black kids and whatnot. I think people just weren't understanding what design was and why it was relevant and why would they put their kids in a program that's teaching design. And they just weren't aware of it. And that became part of my strategy, honestly, moving forward. Was it's like, you know, the way that I looked at it is that the reason why it was so important for Black people to be in design is because our whole world it lives by visual culture. And if you think about pretty much everything that we see and that we interact with, somebody's designed that for us, right? And so, you know, all the things, the images and things that we are seeing and that we're wearing and that we're interacting has been designed for us without having necessarily that Black perspective. And that was important for me to be able to start an organization and stay committed towards trying to get communities of color really locked in on the importance of design. And as I gradually went on, early in the days, I was always communicating that. And then parents started to warm up to that. We started to get more support. And, you know, eventually over time, then, you know, folks that become more warm to that. But we got to think about it, like 20 years ago, there were no STEM education programs, like heck, engineering programs, all these things going on now. And back then, there was none of that. Like, so like trying to get funding and doing all that stuff, it was dry. I wasn't getting nothing. So I had to build a system that was pretty much recession proof, which was working with volunteers. I was given all the time that I had. I was writing all the curriculum. I was going into communities, talking to parents, talking to schools. I was doing all of the sort of work with the volunteers, getting them mobilized and activated, keeping on top of them, and fundraising and working at the same time. So it was just a lot. And, you know, I learned a lot through that, but the early years were rough because of that, you know. And, but I think that, you know, I look back on it now and I'm just like, I often think, man, would I have the, you know, the galls to do it now? And I don't know. I mean, it was a lot, but back then I wasn't thinking about that. I just wanted to help Black people, and that was important for me. I had learned a lot. I had gained a lot from being a designer and learning and getting that space, and I wanted to just basically give that back. So that's how it was for me when I started off.
Terrence, how about you? You mentioned earlier, you know, kind of starting this in the aftermath of Katrina, and you really sort of started AAGD at a time when I feel like technology and social media were starting to become just a lot more commonplace in general in terms of like Web 2.0, if you want to call it that. What was that first year of AAGD like? Like, the technology really helped play a part in those early days?
Yeah, and this is one of those where I wish I had like a such more eloquent story. But initially, AAGD, the Facebook group, was a trash fire. It was just like all of the other groups where people were posting and selling things, and nobody was really communicating with each other. So that first year was me being my normal position in life where I don't necessarily have control of something, because I actually did not run that group. But I took the responsibility, again, it wasn't a choice, to troll the trolls. So anybody on the group who was posting stuff that was not within alignment with what the designers needed to know, I used the internet, LinkedIn, Google searches to find them and to confront them. So I have screenshots of people who are just like, you know, you need to get off this page because you're not doing anything for the community. And so that's how I use technology. And the reason why I started it is because, you know, before Katrina, I was like, I'm going to be a print designer and an illustrator. I'm not even interested in digital, nothing at all. And then during that experience, that whole year, my mind shifted and I was like, this is really amazing. And my first year, I was trying to get other designers to put like African-American graphic designer within their metadata so that we can find each other. But people were like, nah, I'm not gonna do that. I don't want people to know I'm Black. And I was like, oh, what are we doing? So the first year was really tough, but I stuck it out. And like Maurice said, man, patience, persistence, and some faith, because not the community doesn't always grasp initially to the vision of what you're trying to accomplish. And it just takes some time and understanding the audience so that you understand how to craft messages for them so that they can embrace what you're trying to do and so that they can see that this is a good thing so that we can all come together and make impact into the world.
Yeah, I can see how sometimes it can be hard to sort of see the vision right off top, especially if maybe you're not someone that these people even know, if they don't have an idea of who you are, why you're starting this. Sometimes it can be tough to sort of get that recognition. Malene, you created Black Artists and Designers Guild in 2018, from what you said earlier. So the organization is still pretty young, I think, compared to Terrence's and to Maurice's, but you had a pretty like banner first year from what I've heard.
Well, thank you. Well, I mean, the first year we came out, we were doing our events. Now, mind you, this is, you know, pre-George Floyd. So, and there were not that many organizations, meaning within the design industry, corporations paying attention to us. There was a handful who, when we launched, that were like, oh, yes, it's needed. We believe in your mission. And so we were, you know, grassroots, and we started with 30 members. We've grown to about 100 now, and, you know, in different stages of their careers. But after the George Floyd murder, you know, like with most of us, everything changed. But I'll go back to the beginning where, yeah, I feel that we had a lot of wins with our event planning, but the bigger wins came after, unfortunately, after the summer of 2020. And, you know, and as we know, historically within our community, it's we're in the constant roller coaster of we have to lose lives in order to move forward. And it's part of that struggle, you know, that we continue to face, even at this stage of our lives and our experience. And even thinking that, you know, we think that our ancestors have paved the way for us to be here, and that, yes, we should be now reaping the fruits, but we still all know that there's so much more work to be done. And we continue to grow. The key is in the way that we want to grow, and not based on how, you know, certain corporations or the new terms that are out to force us to stay off, to force us to divert our mission. And so that's some of the challenges that we face right now. But to answer your question, I hope I did that. You know, our first year, yeah, we had a lot of wins, and we continue to build. And one of the things I think we're very proud of, that we're basing our wins based on what is it that we want to do, and not based on how the industry is perceiving us.
Mm. That's a good point. That's a good point. And I definitely want to talk more about the summer of 2020, how that might have affected each of your communities. I want to get into that a little bit later. And so I've got a question. This is for everyone. If you were to go back to that first year and do one thing differently, what would it be? Terrence, you start off.
Seek to start a private community on my own, a group outside of Facebook. That's one. Two, set some rules so that people could understand the structure, but it was really hard because I didn't even understand the structure of it. And the third thing I wish I did was realize what it was going to be before it became that. I know that's impossible, but what it became was this collective where people, or it is a collective where people work on projects. And within that first year, through the page, I would get requests for finding people and to work on projects, and I refused them all. I was like, no, this is a community. I don't want this. This is not what we're here for. So I would change those things.
Malene, what about you?
Yeah, I was thinking about that. I think having more clarity, to Terrence, to your point, like you really don't know when you're starting something, but I realized having more clarity as to who should be a part of this, meaning that the group is centered on Blackness. And so if you're uncomfortable with that, then that is not a place for you. I had to learn that early with some members who dropped off early because of that. They didn't want that to be the focus of what we do. So even though it's in the name, even though we talk about the mission, we faced, you know, challenges against that. So that's one of the things. And then I think that was a major, and also too, one of the things I realized too is that definition of a collective needs to be clarified, because when you have a leader like myself, who's very vocal, I'm in the press, I know all the media, people start to think that that's what the group is about, that if you stick in the group, you're going to get this notoriety, and that's all I need to grow. And then, you know, as long as I get in this magazine, blah, 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 everything is going to be great, which is not the truth. And that's not what Badge is about either. So.
Yeah, I think, there's so much. It's hard to pinpoint really one, because I feel like, I don't know, I feel like, you know, in any experience, regardless of anything you change, there's always going to be something else that, you know, you have to deal with at some point that you're like, man, I wish I would have done that differently. You know, it's kind of hard. But I think for me, one of the things early on that I, you know, years ago, that I was like, man, I wish I would have done, I wish I would have focused more on understanding the business side and understanding how to monetize or raise money for the organization early on, because I think that I struggled for many years just around that, because, you know, obviously when I started Inneract Project, wasn't expecting it to be what it is now. I was doing it out of passion, and I still do it out of passion, but there becomes a point where you have to think of scale and your work and how can you make a living doing something that you're really passionate about. And for the first 3 or 4 years, I was strictly on passion fuel. And then that fuel started to get low, man. I mean, I won't tell you how many times I was like, man, I can't do this no more. It's just, I'm done, you know, just from all the work and then the you know, the costs that I was accruing, because in our classes, we don't charge students anything. You know, we don't put that onus on families. We know families are struggling and they have, you know, barriers that they're trying to get past. So we really try to incur a lot of those costs, if not all of them. But that means that we have to constantly be raising in order to be able to support and do the things that we do. So I really wish that early on I would have thought a little bit more about how I can position Inneract Project earlier on to be capturing certain information that allows us to be able to capitalize on funding earlier on. I just didn't know anything about it. I didn't know anything about running a nonprofit. And I was just like, you know what? I'm passionate about this. I want to teach. I want to get the word out. And I focused on the system. But if you look at it in hindsight, you know, if you don't have a system, you don't have anything to raise against too, right? So it kind of like, it's a catch-22. And I think for me, I just, you know, I used to beat myself up about that. Like, man, I wish I would have started raising earlier. But in hindsight now, I'm kind of glad that I did what I did. So it is kind of a difficult question for me to sort of answer, because I feel like there's been a lot of you know, successes and losses that I've occurred over the year that I wish I would have did things differently. But ultimately, I think the path that I went down was the right path for me.
Now, we're kind of, you know, using the word community here pretty loosely, and I'm touching on what Malene just said about sort of the definition of collective. But it's important to indicate that, like, for each of your respective organizations, you have sort of different overall structures, which each of you go in depth about in the book. Inneract Project is an academy of sorts. AAGD is a collective, and Black Artists and Designers Guild, as the name suggests, is a guild. For each of you, how did you sort of decide on that structure?
I can start if you don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I like reading books, and these books I started picking up a lot of books about community while I was starting to figuring out what AAGD was going to be. And I wanted to employ all of the things that I read in these books about how you're supposed to listen to your target audience and how you're supposed to listen to your community and how you're supposed to develop programs based on your community. And I feel like within the African-American community, especially within the creative field, design, a lot of times things are dictated to us and we don't have the opportunity to tell the world and our industry what we actually want. So the structure of my group has always been find out what the community wants and then develop programs that help the community reach their goals. So that was the initial ideas for building the community, and we still do that all the time through polls. We're constantly talking to members of the group, so the structure is very member driven. The other component to that is my dream was to always make sure that I could bring revenue and money to other Black creatives. And so, as I mentioned earlier, I turned away projects, but then I was like, oh, this is a really good business model if I could put some structure to it and if I can find some people in the community to help work on these projects. And then as we started working on projects, I started realizing that we had deeper problems that I needed to learn how to adjust. So then we added another layer of programming. So that's how our structure works. As we discover each other, we implement ideas that helps all of us grow together and brings revenue into the hands of Black designers.
Maurice, how about you?
The structure of our organization has evolved over the years. When I first started off, it was more or less we were academies, and we were doing that, you know, throughout the whole entire year. And then the structure of it sort of evolved through testing and learning, failing a lot. I mean, we failed a lot, and learning from that. And the way we were set up was that we had really 2 or 3 bases that we were looking at. One obviously was communities of color. Second was obviously, like, you know, students of color. That was, you know, those 2 areas. And then third was volunteering. And so, you know, I had to set up a structure that allowed us to be able to scale. So I used the volunteer base to help us scale. So I started writing curriculum, and then I started teaching a class. I had 2 or 3 TAs. And then we taught a class, and then those TAs became teachers, and then they brought in TAs, and then they became teachers, and then they brought in TAs. And then those teachers sat on committees that were basically providing instruction for those teachers. So it became an evolving system that we had going on there. And then in the community, we were, you know, I was in the schools. We were, you know, gathering partnerships as much as we possibly can with schools, organizations, to try to develop a level of sort of connection around what we're doing or what was happening in their lives, because it was really important enough for us to know that, like, you know, students learn just as much inside of the classroom as outside of the classroom. So we wanted to build not only just education, but also awareness programs so that families actually understood the importance of design and why design was relevant to them in their lives and their students' life, their kids' life. Because, you know, parents, they're around their kids all the time. So they're able, if they understand what design is, then they're able to talk with their kids about design in their context. And that's a very important thing that we discovered early on, which was like cultural connection, cultural context. How do we provide the ability for people of color to really understand how design fits in their world? So we started working on that. And the system that I talk about with Inneract Project is really based around really 3 major areas that we cover, and that is skills, which is all the things we teach, you know, the hard skills, soft skills, awareness, which is we just want everybody to know about design and its importance, and then there's mentoring. And then that's kind of like, those 3 areas are like our formula, but it just basically has evolved over all these years and have, you know, various different components to it, or people that plug in at different parts of that system to help it go. So that's kind of like the engine and how we sort of operate and how we connect with communities, students, volunteers, is through those 3 pillars. And, you know, today it's, you know, it's I won't say it's a machine, but we've sort of figured out how to nurture those relationships through those 3 areas.
Well, Maurice, I started to look around at other organizations that were well known within the industry, from, you know, different societies that were focused on, say, interior design and how they were formed. And I realized I didn't want to create anything that was a replicate of what was existing, but just having Black artists and designers as the focus. I really wanted to create something that represented the voices of everyone and have it known that in order for us to operate, that we all have to be active. And so when we thought about the word guild and thinking about, you know, historically, like thinking about artisans and craftspeople, people who are makers coming together and making whatever, whether it's products, space, creating ideas together, I really wanted that to be emphasized within the name. And then how we structured ourselves as a collective, that we would come up with our own projects without any of the restraints of having a client, without any of the restraints of whether, again, the industry is going to accept it, but it was all really about creating space and product and design around the wellness of Black people. And so that's been our focus and our mission. And then we also wanted to make sure that we were representing the Black diaspora. So we wanted something that didn't matter where we were in the world, we could always collaborate and create together, as long as we had a agreement within ourselves and as a group that we wanted to move forward in this way. We are a 501c3, so we did become a nonprofit, which again was something that we had to consider in thinking about to your point, Mo, about like thinking about what does that mean and raising money around it. Because, you know, like myself, I know nothing about running a nonprofit. That is not my experience. And I'm learning, continuing to learn as we grow. But the key is that the core of what we do is we win as a collective. It's not about individualism, and there's no hierarchy amongst the disciplines. So that's why we wanted to make sure that we were a guild, and that's how we operate.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that even on top of these different methods, you know, each of your organizations kind of serves Black designers, I would say, almost at different parts of their creative journey. Like Inneract is geared towards like middle school, high school, college, and early career through Uplift, which is a newer program. African-American graphic designers kind of caters to a range of people from design students to working professionals. Black Artist Designers Guild is for experienced self-employed artists and designers in very specific areas. So like fine art, furniture, architecture, etc. Talk to me about sort of the purpose of focusing on those particular audiences, because when someone says Black design, that can mean a number of different fields. Malene, you start.
Sure. I think a lot of it stemmed from the people that were in my circle. I was self-employed, independent artist designer. And most of my friends we shared that same background. And I saw that there was a lack of support within that area, because a lot of the other organizations, you could work for a company or you could have your own business. But I really wanted to carve out a space specifically for majority of us are solo entrepreneurs. Whether it looks like on Instagram that we have a whole team, the reality is we're running the ships by ourselves. And I personally know how hard that is. And I knew the stories of my colleagues. And so it was really important for us to focus on that. We tried in the beginning to include the students, but we realized we didn't have the administrative support to support them. And I didn't want us to get involved in a group that we weren't able to nurture. So we had to cut that out, and we figured out another way to nurture the students through grants and through mentoring. So it's not that we didn't want them involved, it's just that we understood we just didn't have the bandwidth. But yeah, so self-employed artists, it's a huge need of continual support, and that's why we decided to focus there.
Maurice,
I think the focus for us started off with early education, and you know, and then we sort of worked our way up. You know, I've always been a big advocate of the way to change sort of this narrative around more Blacks in design evolves from early education, early access, you know, awareness. Our families just don't know about careers in design. It's just what it is. And, you know, I go out, I talk with families all the time, and I have to tell them what it is. Some of them, you know, have some general understanding, but for the most part, you know, they attribute it to, you know, like, video games and stuff like that, which is fine. Yeah. But they don't have a complete picture and understanding of the work and what does it mean to be a designer, and the level of importance that design has on our world. So we started off really, you know, trying to get kids early. Middle school was our touch point. We did a bunch of research around it, and, you know, learned that, you know, if you connect with someone as early as middle school, that's usually the best time to really sort of get them acclimated and into a profession as they start to sort of develop the things that they like. They're not so much inundated by peer pressure and a lot of other things that happens once they start getting high school. So we kind of started there, and throughout there, you know, I think we just started to expand because, you know, our students started to get older and, you know, they started to, you know, go beyond, you know, middle school and high school. And then from high school, they started going to college, early career. And, you know, it was important for us to be able to look at the entire funnel from in terms of our support. And, you know, for what we do, a lot of our work with middle school to high school is primarily more around the education space. So we're teaching specific classes and we have various different programs to help them learn. As they start to get to college and early career, that stuff is, you know, with Uplift, you know, it's more catered around just providing additional support. So it's not necessarily us teaching them or providing, you know, any sort of educational experiences. It's just being like, you know, we're here, you know, we can provide whatever resources and connections we have through our network to allow, you know, people of color to be able to come on there, this platform and get connected to people that are in the business. And, you know, we've seen, you know, through our later stage work that we do, the mentoring part is really critical because, you know, I get a lot of students that are trying to find jobs and can't find stuff, or they find stuff and then they're told, well, you don't have the credentials to be able to do this for whatever reason, which, you know, I get a little bit, you know, angry about those things, but they happen. And so I was like, okay, how can we support those students? And knowing that there's other organizations, institutions that are already in that space, we also try to, you know, stay in our lane too much because I feel like there's other really great people out there doing really great work. But through this system, again, I'm coming back to that because, you know, when we started off early, you know, we went to middle school, and now the college and early career part is our way of being able to sort of continue the cycle of, you know, of entry. So whether you start in middle school, you can start in high school, you can start in early career, you can start in college. And then through that, you always are able to get connected to opportunities, whether that be more on the education side or maybe the connection side as well. So.
Yeah. How about you,
Yeah.
Terrence? I mean, with AAGD kind of having its origins on Facebook, that's everybody. Everybody that searches is going to find that and try to join.
I was thinking about that. It is everybody, but in a way it's not everybody because there were no high school students, right? So that immediately eliminated my opportunities to, I mean, it didn't eliminate, but the target audience was specifically people who were in college because that was Facebook's early target audience. And then a bunch of design entrepreneurs, not really design professionals yet. There are professionals in there now, but I really like to allow the target audience, the community, to lead the decisions that we make and to glean more information from them. And so what we found was there were a lot of design entrepreneurs who needed very specific business and entrepreneurial skills, because as we all know, it's not taught in college. Right. Especially with my group, a lot of the members did not go to college for design. And so through polls and through a lot of individual conversations over the years, it became quite clear what we needed to focus on. And it changes every year because there's some new person with new needs that we didn't think about, but now it's emerged, and we have to find a way to make sure that they are serviced also. Like right now, we have people who have been in the industry for a while and may have stepped out, but now they want to step back in, and automation and tools, all of these things are really complicated. So they need people to sit with them who they trust to kind of help them understand the landscape of the industry and the landscape of the tools right now and how to use them efficiently. So we keep developing programs, as I was saying earlier, really based on our community and the target audience. So yeah, in ways it was determined by Facebook, but then after we polled the group and had conversations, we really started honing in on what we needed to serve and how we needed to serve them.
Now, community building, as you all know, is a lot of work. It's a lot of work that goes into it. And I think, you know, particularly with the pandemic over the past couple of years, communities like yours have become a lot more important, probably than when you started, because people are seeking out community now, not because they can't necessarily meet in person or go to a conference or something like that. For each of you, and Malene, I'll start with you. What do you do for self-care? Because handling the needs of a community and keeping it running smoothly is a lot.
Oh, yes. I mean, recently, that could be a whole nother panel. I mean, recently I had to check out. I got out the country. I went on a vacation by myself, and I went somewhere where no one knew me on purpose, and somewhere I've never been. And it was funny. I went to Dominica, to be exact, and I just wanted to hike, eat good food, and get massages every day. And I got all of that. And it was interesting because I was there. I had breakfast, lunch, and dinner by myself. I purposely didn't want to sit near anybody, and I didn't want to talk about what I do, and I didn't care about what you did. So I really checked out, and it was one of the best times of my year so far. And so I think what it is, especially for us as a community, we need to take our breaks, and it needs to be on our calendar. And we have to stop making excuses that we don't have the time, we don't have this, we don't have that. Yes, whatever break that we need, everybody who's on this panel, we should have them 4 times a year at least. And that break it doesn't involve travel, but you decide what that break is, because we all need it to reset. And that's how I called my vacation. It was a reset vacation. And I have another one planned in September. And so, you know, we have to do that in order to have the self-care. And then also, you know, we also need to, for me personally, I didn't post on Instagram that week, which was quite refreshing, because usually when I'm away, I'm always sharing. And usually when I travel, it gets the highest engagement. But I said, I don't even care about that right now. I want to stay present in the moment. And so I try to find these moments where I could stay present and not have the pressure of always sharing, or just even talking and thinking that I have to even make something, do something, or reorganize something. So that's how I take care of myself. One of the ways.
Maurice, how about you?
That's a good question. You know, man, I gotta think about it. I mean, the reality of it is that I don't take care of myself as much as I should, and I'll be, transparent about that. And, you know, I do get away. I do take vacations, but I think, for the most part, the thing that drives me is that, I have a son who's 12, who's into basketball, and that release from just working out with him and going to his games, and we go out of town quite a bit. It's enough to give me a break, a mental break away from work. I was joking with a friend of mine a while back, because, with the pandemic, I mean, it just changed everything. Like, I feel like I work way, 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 way more than I've ever worked in my life. And what I realized is that, those mental breaks of sitting in traffic and going to work, and then coming home, sitting in traffic while going to work was really an important part of my day. And I used to hate it, right? Like, nobody wants to sit in the traffic all day, but it provided me with the space to be able to sit by myself, not have a bunch of people emailing me and calling me, texting me, and I could just zone out and just relax and be prepared and have those transitions in my day that I don't have anymore. Vacation wise, we just don't get away. We go to Maui a couple of times out of the year, but I just feel like it's never enough. Like, I go to Maui and, I come back home and it's like, I have to take a vacation from the vacation sometimes, right? Like I gotta take another break from that, if that makes sense to people. Like, and so I don't know, like, I haven't figured out the best way to really sort of settle in on that. All I can say is that I do take breaks. It just never feels like it's enough. Like I feel like, I'm still swimming in a sea of anxiety sometimes because I feel like there's so many things that I want to do. And it's hard for me sometimes to detach myself from those responsibilities. And I think my goal is that, within a year or two that I can start to, drop some of the things that I'm doing and be able to just focus only on a few things. And by getting to that, I'll be able to, get that time to be able to take care of myself a little bit better mentally than I have. I think physically I'm fine, but mentally having that space to be able to think and do other things.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a question I always love because it's really interesting to hear where we all are and what we all need to maintain our sanity. My setup is I pretty much work every day. However, I have learned some things that help keep me sane. Number one, I'm a kid from New Orleans, so I got my vices. I'm gonna just put that out there. Two, I have learned I hated schedules and scheduling and blocking out time, but now that is one of the most important things I have ever done. My calendar looks scary because I have all the times blocked out, but I also have taken time over the years to understand what I need, what's imperative for me to function well. And that's probably one of the biggest accomplishments I've had. I know I love exercise in the morning. I love exercise while I'm reading in the morning on the treadmill to get my mind straight. I know something like jujitsu has to be a part of my life because when you choke somebody in real life, you feel less inclined to choke somebody online because dealing with a community, we can have intense conversations and that really helps relax me and it keeps my mind fresh. It helps me see things from different perspectives. Therapists, those really help. They help me keep things in check. And also, believe it or not, as exhausting as running a community can be, especially for somebody who's introverted like I am, I get tired when I talk. It keeps me energized because people are always giving me a little bit more or providing some ideas or making my life slightly easier in ways that I couldn't imagine. And the other thing is with scheduling, I block things out. So I make sure that I spend time with my daughter. We have daddy-daughter time every day where she comes up with a million creative things, which helps inspire me. Sometimes I go for creative walks. I hang out with friends. So I do a lot of work, but I also make sure that I do have these spaces where I'm sharing with other people and having time to get my mind right. So.
I wanna go back to the summer of 2020. I believe we're roughly right around exactly 2 years from that summer. And for those, of course, that are listening who probably know this was George Floyd being murdered by the Minneapolis police, and then people really taking to the streets to protest police brutality and violence, which then I think ended up ballooning into a number of other causes where you started to see organizations in their own way come out with support against Black people, Black Lives Matter. I'm kind of casting a wide net here because I think most places just put up a black square on Instagram and kept it moving. But I know this just from talking through people through my show, and I'm curious to hear from all of you. Did your organizations receive any increased attention following the events of the summer?
I can go first. Yeah. I mean, I think the simple of it is, yeah. We had gotten, definitely a ramp, a kick up in that. And it was hard to process, to be honest, because I was getting emails daily multiple emails daily. And, I was trying to figure out, like, how do I deal with all of this while trying to run the organization and trying to work and family and all of this stuff. So it was rough. I think, the support is always obviously warranted. You want that support. But what I've sort of learned over the course of the time is not all support is the right support for you at any given moment. You have to kind of prioritize that support. And I had to kind of do that, and I think, the difficult part is that I think that sometimes, during these tragic events, people have somewhat of an awakening. And, I tell people, I was like, man, I've been, for Black people, we've been dealing with this for a long time. So this is like nothing like, I mean, not saying that it was like, not important, but it was just like, I've seen this in my community a lot. I've seen the brutality. I know it exists. I've been pulled over multiple times. I know what it's like. And, it's an awakening that happened in our country that affected a lot of people emotionally. So then on the other hand of it, you as an individual or someone running a community or organization has to be sensitive or have empathy for people that are moved by the moment and want to do something and channel that energy into good. And so I think that's where the perspective that I took was like, man, this is exhausting. A lot of people are doing this, but on the positive side, people are lashing out for a reason. They want to get activated. And my question was, how do we as a nonprofit help people get activated and channel that energy in for good? So.
Malene, how about you?
Oh, yes. Did we? I mean, Maurice, when, it was funny because, like I said in the beginning, nobody was paying attention to us. We were doing our thing. We had a little bit of money in the bank, not much. And all of a sudden, the email started to blow up, and we're on Squarespace. And for those on Squarespace, our donations were coming through Squarespace. And it was like, wait a second, is this real? Is this like real money, like donation? And it was nonstop. And, it was like, yeah, we would get these small little donations, but it was like, oh, $1,000 here, $5,000 here, $10,000, $100, like, and I was like, OMG. Now, what people don't realize is that, one, as you were saying, Mo, to even deal with that, like the reality is that all of a sudden, all this money is being thrown at you. And then you're getting calls by corporations, brands that you grew up with, like brands that it was the dream to be a partner with, are calling you and says, let's have a meeting. And, and you start to question it. Well, when we start to realize like this is real, how do we take advantage of it? Because the other reality is that we know as a community, we've been here before, and we don't know how long it's going to last. And so we have to take action and take advantage of what's in front of us right now. Because we know as we are right now, yes, it has died down. Those emails aren't coming in like they did 2 years ago. The monies are not coming in like they were 2 years ago. And then we also had to realize, yes, companies may be giving money, but then they still want us to work just to get the money. Which another thing we had to learn, and to your point, Mo, every opportunity doesn't mean it's a good opportunity. And so we had to start to say, no, you are not in sync with our mission. You can't give us money and then expect us to do X, Y, and Z, and then the organization doesn't get any money because it just went all to administration. So how is the organization benefiting? So that's what we had to learn over these past 2 years. And now we're a lot more savvy when, a corporation or anyone wants to donate. But yeah, it was a huge influx. And during that time, we were able to launch our Obsidian project, which was a virtual concept house. And it was amazing. So that was one of the big things that came out of that influx. And we continue to try to build from there.
2020, for me, I hated it. I'm not gonna lie. We are not a nonprofit. So there was no giving us money. There were a lot of people calling. And my analogy is like, I really like donuts. And it's like, I've always just wanted a donut, but all of a sudden everybody just dumped them all on my porch at one time. And I'm like, I can't eat I can't eat a million donuts, y'all. So I thought it was grossly unfair. It kind of sickened me in many ways. I got tired of having these surface level, oh, we just figured out that there's a problem. And I'm like, yeah. And then they would come up with these brilliant solutions. It's like, yeah, we came up with that solution about 5 years ago, and here are all the things. So it's really interesting hearing what people would come up with. I took a lot of phone calls. We did get more projects. Luckily for us, our engine is still working, so we still get projects, and that funds everything else. As for, is it still going on? In spurts. Those people who reached out in 2020, I'm good at stalking people. I know how to get back in touch with you when you didn't fulfill your promise, or you had this conversation where you extracted information, but you really didn't give anything. I got your number. I'm coming for you. So as soon as we get things more organized, I'll reach back out to them. But honestly, I felt like it was grossly unfair to have everybody just like come at you at once and not even understand the complexities of trying to scale immediately.
Yeah.
And also to add to your point, Terrence and Mo, that it kind of felt like dating in a way, where all these people are like interviewing and then you get ghosted. There was so much ghosting.
Yeah.
You know, and it was like, well, and these are big name companies. So then you start to feel like, okay, so basically you are trying to figure out which Black organization to partner with. You really don't want to work with us. And that's what I don't know about for you guys, but that's what I had to start to realize. Either you want to work with us, or don't waste our time with having multiple meetings over and over, and then you're not supporting us financially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I started asking for long-term plans. What's your long-term plan? If you don't have one, then no, you're scratching the surface, and you don't have time for that.
Yeah, exactly. And if it's like, if you want to do a one-time donation, just say that. With, oh, there's the potential, we want to grow. No, what do you want to do right now? How much are you willing to support our programs? And don't ask for us to continue to do work just to get your money, because that's not what this is about. So yeah.
Yeah, I experienced that, especially that one. I think people don't really realize how many resources it takes. I mean, you gotta understand this, but the resources that it takes to run these programs, these organizations, these communities, these guilds, like, it's just critical that if I look at it like this, like, if you're interested in supporting, then support it. If you're interested in partnering with us, be clear about that early on and say, look, I want to partner with you, but I need to get this on my end so that my folks will feel good about me giving money to you. Okay, at least I know. I think, for me, I started off really pushing the envelope around, okay, well, if you're going to give me money, I'll do this program, but I need to put a percentage of additional dollars on that ask to go towards our organization. And so some companies were cool with it and some of them weren't. And I think that the ones that weren't, we just moved on from those. And I think for us, I started to get a little bit more hip to the game as it started going along, and I started pushing that narrative and increasing that amount, especially as we started to get support. I'm like, you know what? I'm finna ask for 2 or 3 times what I normally ask now. And let's just see what people say. And some people were like, some companies were like, all right, we'll do that. And then some were like, ooh, I don't know. And I was like, all right, well, I think the reality of it is, and see, this is a thing that also, as Black people, we don't always ask for the money of our worth, right? Like, we got to get in the habit of saying, no, we're not going for this or that. You need to give us exactly what you're giving other folks for this, and I think that, I definitely had that imposter syndrome for a very long time. And I wasn't asking for enough. And then I started seeing what other people were asking for. I'm like, man, I ain't asking for enough. Feel me? Like, I ain't asking for enough. I need to start asking for more. And then once I got into that mentality, everything changed, because now I go into meetings with confidence, knowing that, like, look, I know I can get this rate. I've gotten it before, and I'm not going down. I know how much work it takes. I know what we have to do on our end to make it happen. I have enough experience to know how to run programs, how to facilitate, how to work with partners, volunteers, students, communities, all of that stuff. And and I'm just not trying to hear that. And I think it was a very, very, very long process that my board, my friends, supporters had to go with me, because I was always kind of had that mentality of like, man, am I asking for too much? Should I, man, okay, well, maybe we need to do this program so that we can make sure we don't lose the support. That's a lot of that stuff that goes on. And I think that I really learned over the years how to sort of think past that and be more confident about what I'm asking for.
I was going to ask, but all of you kind of already chimed in about sort of if you've seen that support continue. And I think it's terrible that, and it seems like in everyone's cases, it's kind of diminished, even though there had been this sort of really strong push at the beginning. Now you're not getting the calls, you're not getting the email, or the donations aren't coming in like they were 2 years ago. I'll share my story here because I haven't really shared it publicly, maybe in a few places. I don't remember. Anyway, so when the summer of 2020 happened in June, I had just gotten laid off from my job the month before that, like right before Memorial Day. And they had done it like super clumsily over a Zoom call. And they basically like eliminated my entire department. And so when I started getting these calls and things in June, it was such a weird tension, because in a way, after getting laid off, they had given us a severance. And so I said, this is the first time in my professional career I can take a break. I can like not do anything for a few months. Like I'll still do the show, but like I can not do anything for a few months. And then people are getting out on the streets and protesting. And what happened was this old presentation that I did in 2015 called Where Are the Black Designers? I had put this presentation together largely because I was getting a lot of companies coming to Revision Path asking, we're trying to hire, where can we find them? You seem to, I don't know, have like melanin spidey sense. How do you find Black designers or whatever? And so I put that presentation together sort of out of my frustration of always getting that question. Now I had given that presentation at South by Southwest to a room of about 20, 25 people, not a banner turnout. It was in one of those big convention rooms. Jimmy Kimmel was in the room next to me, so he had a packed house. I had people that were sleeping and charging their phones. And so I had given this presentation, 5 years had passed. To me, it's like history. Someone rediscovered it on YouTube and started sending it around to people. And now all of a sudden people are emailing me like, oh, we saw this presentation. How can we give you money? How can we support you? And I'm like, I'm kind of taking a break right now, but it's like, the opportunity comes at a time where I don't know if this is going to come again. And so I should take advantage of it, but I also need to rest. Like it was a weird sort of dichotomy. I had a lot of organizations and companies reached out. I spoke at a lot of conferences and things like that. And yeah, 2 years later, I'd say it's all pretty much dried up. So it sucks. But I think kind of to your point, Maurice, what you were saying about sort of knowing your worth, like after a while with all these interactions, I just had to say, there were certainly things I had to turn down and say no to. There were a couple of opportunities that were just extremely transparent. They didn't even know the name of the show. They didn't even get the name of the show right. They just did a search for Black designers and found Revision Path. And those you end up saying no to because you can tell they're just in it for the moment and not for the movement, so to speak. But yeah, it's rough, man. It's not cool.
Yeah. So can I ask a question really fast, or should I just wait
No,
for
go
everybody?
ahead. Yeah, ask the question.
So I expected at our gut level, we all expected it to end and it to be a fad. So I wanted to ask, like, what was the most important thing you learned from that? What is the most important thing you took away from that experience?
From the fall off?
Yeah, well, from the fall off and all of the interaction you had with all of these people.
I think what comes to mind is that now when corporations come to us, I keep at top of mind, they need us more than we need them.
Mm-hmm.
And if we don't solidify a deal, like my mother always told me, you can't miss what you never had. So I'm okay with walking away. As a group, we're okay with walking away. But I know when I go into these meetings now, if the numbers aren't right, if it doesn't add up, it's okay. And so I think what I've learned is to build this level of confidence around the work that we do and then what we need to support it. And we only want people who truly believe in our mission and understand, no questions asked. It's just about, well, how much do you need? Which program can we support? How much do you need? And then they're like, okay, we're not here to fight. We do that in so many ways in our lives. And this is not a fight that we're, debating over. If we need $10,000, that's what we need. Don't come back saying we have two. Then this is not the program for you. That's all.
Yeah, I agree 100% with that. I think for me, the biggest thing that I learned was how to create a process around how do we build long-term partnerships. And I think, when I started off before that, our money was, coming in very different places. It was hit or miss here or there. During the pandemic, when money started right around George Floyd, that time, it was a lot of things happening. And I think people were, capitalizing in a lot of ways on that moment. So we were getting people reaching out to us too, to try to be, the creators or starters of certain things. And I think what I tried to sort of develop was, how do we create long-term partnerships that will last past this? Because I knew it was going to die. I knew it was going to die. And I was like, all right, well, we have these people lined up. What things can I put in place so that we can continually have dialogue with these people over the years? So what I started to do is create this message around long-term partnerships. What does that mean? And what that basically put us in a position is we were envisioning out multi-year engagements. So we knew that once a company started to come in early on during that time and they started to engage with us, we would at least have a couple of more years under our belt under that partnership to be able to sustain momentum. And with raising money and all that stuff, it's all about relationships. The more that you're connected in with people and the more you get locked in and stay locked in with people, people stay. And so I was like, how can I do that? So I just started to set up those processes. And over the years, we've had some drop off, but our major big companies that we work with, and we work with a lot of the big tech companies, pretty much most of them, all of them have pretty much stayed on. And we've been able to provide ourselves with a lot more resources now, because the things that we started back then, we were able to capitalize on those long-term partnerships that have carried with us throughout the years.
I basically kept a burn book because I had a lot of companies that were coming to me. I mean, and it was clear that it was not in, I think, service of the mission of what Revision Path was trying to do. I don't even think it was in service of the mission they thought they were trying to do. It was more so, this is a moment, our competitors are doing this, so we need to jump on this too. Yeah. And so I kept a list of, like Santa, I was like, this is a naughty sponsor, this is a nice sponsor. And in some instances, I would play them off of each other. to let them know, like, well, your competitors are doing this. So
Love it.
what's good. Or particularly like, because we've managed, I mean, we've been lucky over the years to have pretty large sponsors. I'll lead with those names. And so then if a company or an organization is wanting to come with sponsorship, they know that like, this is kind of the level that we're at, just so you know. So don't come thinking, oh, well, we're not going to provide support. We're not going to do X, Y, Z. We've turned away big sponsors before, sponsors that used to sponsor us before. I mean, I'll be completely honest, we do not do anything with Facebook/Meta anymore. They used to be, they were like our biggest sponsor that came on back in 2016. And then just over the years, as democracy has eroded through their platform, we started to get feedback from our listeners that was like, why are you still rocking with them? And I'm like, that's a good point. And also just the communication broke down and I just didn't want to fool with them anymore. But eventually over the years, you end up sort of learning, or at least what I learned through this summer is like, who's in it that's actually in it and who's just in it for brownie points. And it became super clear, super quickly, I think, after that summer. Yeah. Last question. Given where we are now in society, with your unique perspectives as community builders, how can designers help create a just and equitable world? Anyone can start off.
By aligning themselves with communities and people who are working towards justice, period. And to also support all of these organizations who are working hard to provide space for them to grow and evolve.
I would say if they're an independent designer, that the equitable spaces can be created within their work. It should be reflective in their portfolios. And then if they're working within companies, that again, when we talk about what inclusive design is, starting from having all those voices part of the design process. You know, recently I was at a residency, and the residency is like 73 years old, right? And there were no heat in the cabins. And I thought to myself, well, who designed this space? Like, Black people were not there to think about designing this space, okay? And so I think about, again, when we talk about how do we create, you know, equity and inclusiveness, it starts at the beginning. Like, before the thing is created, what kind of conversations are we having as a community to create these spaces so that, you know, everybody is heard in some way? So I think that's one of the ways. And to add on to what you said, Terrence, yeah, continue to support the organizations that exist. And because that's also very, very powerful. And also one more thing during, I thought about this during, you know, the summer of 22. Well, I'm sure you noticed this too in your industry, that a lot of white-led organizations started to create their own equity or inclusive based on the industry that we're in, but they weren't supporting us. They wanted to do it on their own. And so that also created another division. And I would look and say, well, again, you continue to exercise the quote unquote privilege that you have to create these spaces because you have the big companies who are financing it, but why aren't you supporting the companies who've been doing, organizations that have been in this game, yep, and have the authentic experience around the injustice? So, yep, so that's another thing.
Ooh, oh my gosh. Man, I mean, you guys said it. I mean, you know, I always tell all my mentees and stuff that, you know, we as designers have the awesome privilege of representing large groups of people. You know, I work at Microsoft, and, you know, I design products and services for 50, 60 million people, right? So I'm, you know, at the seat of the table when decisions are being made about why we should and shouldn't do certain things within the product. And it's important that, you know, we as designers take that seriously. We're representing folks, and we're making decisions. So having individual responsibility around the work you do and being empathetic and understanding the people that you are serving, because you are serving them. It's your job to serve them. We're servants of people because we're creating things that people use, admire, help them do their jobs better, et cetera, et cetera. We should take that responsibility seriously. And I think that in a just, equitable world, we as individuals can represent a vast amount of perspectives, because we as Black people have been through a lot. And because of that, you know, our perspective is incredibly important. This country is built on the back of Black people. Let's be real. And if you look at all the things that you know are happening in our world today, a lot of it has been carried through generational degradation of our community and our culture. And you know, I tell people all the time, you know, the stuff that happened, you know, all these tragedies are happening, you know, with George Floyd and people being murdered by the police. I turn that back in the face of design a little bit, because the police officers don't have, they're not the people that are the police officers that are abusing Black people are not living in Black communities, right? They don't know the things that we go through or how we are as people. They see that, and they are hearing certain things about us. And that visual culture, again, it's very important, because like over the years, we have been represented as being lesser than, being angry, or being dangerous. And those psychological sort of attributes have been placed on us through years and years and years of oppression. And that has caused people to misrepresent Black people. And that's the reason why, you know, in a just and equitable world, we have to be at the table and be able to control some of these messages, some of these visual images that allow us to be able to tell the story right. So for me, that's important in helping sort of create an equitable world. Is we just need more, we need more Black people. So, you know, I'm always pushing for that all the time. Like, you know, whatever I can do, folks can reach out to me on LinkedIn at any time. I try to answer as many people as possible. I try to jump on calls as much as I can. And I try to help as many people as I possibly can, because I really, really believe in this. And I think that it's really important that, you know, not only just for the design industry, but for the world, we really need this, so.
Terrence, take us home.
Oh, for that question? Oh, I answered it earlier, but really fast. Yeah. Yeah. You want me to do it again?
No. I remember.
Okay. Okay. I thought you were talking about the question in the chat. I was like, ooh, that's a very big question.
Actually,
okay.
You know what? We should probably get to the chat question. So let's wrap it up here. I'd like for each of you to tell us how we can support the work you're doing. Please shout out your organizations. Where can people find you all online? Terrence, you start off.
AAGD.co on Instagram and our website. And if you're a designer, join our community and be active and have conversations and be vulnerable. That's the best way you can help.
Malene.
Mo?
Oh.
Sure. I put our website in the chat. It's badguild.info, and then our Instagram is @badguild. Feel free to I'm sorry I didn't hyperlink it. I should have, but feel free to join and see the work that we're doing. And of course, financial donations are always welcome. And we, one of the things, just to touch on quickly, Mo, you talked about these long-term partnership. Long-term, it comes in many forms. And one of the things that we really pushed during that summer was, if it's $10 a month, if that's what you have, make a commitment. That's what you're giving every month. And to be honest, we have a lot of people who give small amounts every month. And so we're not just relying on corporations to operate. We do believe in the collective work of the community. And that means every individual effort, it counts. So that's another way to support us.
Yeah, I echo those things too. I mean, I think in terms of finding us, our website is inneractproject.org, just INNERACT project.org. And I can leave a comment in here. We're on social, so the same thing, Inneract Project at Inneract Project. We're on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook. We're on all of those social platforms. So, if you want to follow us, obviously that's where to go. And, definitely, I'm always pushing for donations because, like everybody else, we're trying to, we need money in order to be able to do work that we're doing. And it's just such a critical part of being able to sustain and continue providing free services for Black and Brown youth throughout the year. And then lastly, we have a platform called Uplift by Inneract Project that's coming out. And it's really for college and early career professionals. It's, a new initiative that we're working on. We would love support. If you are in college or early career, you can go to upliftdesigners.com and sign up for our mailing list. We're going to start off with a smaller group of folks. So if you're interested, sign up sooner than later. And then from there, we'll contact you. We'll be having basically, Uplift will be providing college and early career professionals the ability to be able to connect with designers that are in the business. If you are a freelance designer and you just want feedback on your work, you can go in there. I've seen people use that before. I've seen people go in there and find mentors. I've seen people go in there if they're trying to prepare for an interview. They may go in there and interview like 3 or 4 times before they do that. And statistics show that if you have gone through 2 to 3 interviews, you're more likely to get that job. So we're just trying to provide as much as opportunities as we can for Black people. And if that's something you're interested in, that's another way to connect with our organization as well.
Nice. And for me, you can find Revision Path at revisionpath.com, revisionpath.com. We're also on Twitter and on Instagram, Revision Path, just all one word. And we also just recently kind of soft launched. We'll do some more talk about it next month, but we've partnered with State of Black Design to create something called the 10th Collective, which is a way for early, mid, and senior level Black designers, senior career Black designers to get warm introductions to companies. So it's sort of the next evolution of what I did with Where Are the Black Designers, as well as what State of Black Design does. If these companies come calling, we're trying to do the legwork to actually make those introductions, to make that happen. And so you can find more information about that at the10thcollective.com. I'll put that in the chat as well. But thank you all so much for a great conversation. And let's look at some questions and answers.
So
I had Zoom minimized this whole time, so I didn't know there were questions.
Sure. So we have some really great questions in the chat. We can start from the bottom and work our way up. Steve, if you wanted to come off mute, you can ask, or I can read it for you. I can go ahead and read it for you. Steve wants to know, what are your thoughts? Oh, okay, go ahead, Steve.
Nope.
Yep.
No, Tiffany, that's fine. You can do it.
No, you do it. You're already off mute. We love to have engagement. Please.
No, well, first of all, thanks you guys. Very great conversation. But, you know, there's been a lot of talk. Juneteenth is coming up. And one of the good and bad things with this being kind of a national holiday, I think, Maurice, you had mentioned it, Malene, you had mentioned it as well, this kind of commodification and some of these missteps. You know, Walmart comes to mind. I'm sure you guys have seen a lot of the stuff out there around Juneteenth and kind of when we're not in control of the narrative. So I just wanted to kind of hear your thoughts on what you think. This is essentially like kind of the first official Juneteenth, and you can see all the marketing and around it, but it doesn't seem like too many of us are at the table making any of the design decisions.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, personally, I mean, I think this is, you know, a direct result of why it's important that we're doing the work that we're doing, right? Is we're trying to sort of cultivate, but yet also provide more opportunities for people of color to be in those seats. And I think the missteps are happening, I think, not only just because there aren't designers at the table, but also the people that are running the organizations too. You know, so having leadership, diverse leadership is also critical, because they're going in and they're making certain decisions about what things we should and shouldn't have. And I know I've been working as a designer for a very, very long time. And, you know, having the leadership and having people to be able to make those calls is, you know, it's just not there. And I think, you know, companies, you know, they're always going to sort of commodify everything. That's what they do. And, you know, a lot of that is, I think, at the backs and result of we as people starting to push back on that narrative. And I think that, like, you know, I was reading a stat that, you know, Black people in general are starting to become more and more attached to how companies are misappropriating or using or giving back to Black communities as part of the reason why they're supporting certain companies. And I think that narrative needs to be pushed up a little bit higher. We need to be more actively engaged in how companies are sort of either misappropriating our culture and be able to speak out on that, because it is, you know, folks are going to come in, they're going to try to make money off of us. They've been doing that for years, right? That's not nothing new. And it's not going to stop until we actually start raising our hands and saying, you know what, nah, we're going to protest this stuff. We're not going to buy your things, take it off the shelf. And that's a collective as a people that we need to be on the same page and you know, foster that level of resistance against those things.
Just to add on, Mo, what you're saying is, it's, of course, it's a disappointment, but it's expected. You know, whenever the masses of the country is going to celebrate something that, whether we decided we were going to celebrate in our own way, but once they take the control, we already know it's out of our hands. And we can't expect anything different from, say, a Walmart or any of these companies, because to your point, it is the leadership. We are not there on the inside making the decisions around marketing, design, and even the idea of creating a collection around Juneteenth. I think what it is that, can we just have the holiday and just have the holiday? Like, you don't need to create products around it.
Right.
You know, and I think because, again, because, you know, it's like if we think about it, if the holiday didn't become a federal holiday before, say, George Floyd, would we be having this issue? I don't know if as many corporations will be paying much attention to it. They just think, okay, it's just another holiday, whatever, fine. But I think we need to, like, divert our energies into other things. And it's just another reminder that we need to be careful onto what kind of holidays we want to celebrate and who should be aware about it. There's something about when we created our spaces, yes, everybody is invited, but we created a space to celebrate how we want to celebrate. And so once it becomes this grandiose scale, we lose control of how it's celebrated. I've seen all kinds of flyers with people that did not look like us who are celebrating Juneteenth, and they control the whole event. And it was like, really? Is this real? Is this what it's come to? So there's just so many different levels. But going back to leadership, I just want to iterate. So Badge, we have a collection with Pottery Barn. Okay. Now, because I'm the type of leader I am, I had to sit on those meetings with the president of Pottery Barn and the team and make sure over and over, we are doing a Black collection. We want Black people in the ads. We want Black people that look like this. Like, we had to be very explicit. And I said, no, we're not doing white rooms, white walls. That's what you always do. We want this collection to be distinct based on who we are, how we decide what Black joy is. It's not what you. And you know, they were like, okay, but that is only based on me and the mission of Badge and making sure that they understood you're partnering with us for a reason. Remember, you came to us. We did not knock on your door. So we invited you in, and we're letting you know if you want to partner with us, this is what needs to be done. And so, they followed everything that we said, but again, it was a constant reiteration, because when those ideas started to come in and it's like, no, that's questionable. Nope, that is not going to roll. But you had a leader who was not afraid to back down. And so that is really important, to the point of, even before like figuring out marketing and everything, to the negotiation. I had to specifically say in a meeting, when we were trying to get more money and they were hesitating, I had to say to them, you've been in business for 60 years and you've never partnered with a Black organization, and none of your products have ever celebrated Black families. I had to say that. And of course, once I said that, they couldn't say anything, and they came back with more money. And so that's why it's so important, whoever is representing any of these marketing plans, collections, design, that the person who is, in a sense, we are representing the community, even though it's a lot to be on our shoulders, but we have to be clear about what we want. And I think that's important. Yes, Pottery Barn is recent, so I can put the link in the chat. So hold on.
Thank you so much. Maurice, were you going to add?
No, I was just thinking, like, I feel like Walmart was sort of one of the first, maybe the only, I'm not sure, I haven't seen anything else, but I feel like they're the first really big brand to kind of step out there and, take the L. Like, they put this out thinking that this was going to be something, I guess, in celebration, and it was widely jeered by a lot of people. I saw stuff on TikTok, I saw stuff on Twitter, everything, where people were just like, this is not the move, and they completely yanked it. One thing that I thought was interesting, sort of among some of that dust up, was, even to call it dust up probably is not accurate, but there were people talking about the trademarking of the term Juneteenth and how that might provide some level of protection. And like, I don't know if you can really trademark a holiday. Like, when you trademark stuff, it's always under certain categories. So you could trademark something that's like Juneteenth Jam Fest as a music festival, and they could still use that. Does that provide protection against like the Juneteenth holiday? Not necessarily. It's funny, I haven't really seen, since the Walmart incident, any other companies kind of jumping out, at least publicly in a big way, to say that they are or aren't celebrating Juneteenth. I know at my employer, I'm taking Juneteenth off. Can't speak for everybody else. I'm going to be off.
I wanted to know.
We deterred Pottery Barn from doing it. So we said no.
Does anybody know any examples of company that's handling Juneteenth well? Any examples you've seen so far? I haven't.
But then I think,
Target.
what Malene was sort of saying earlier is like, this kind of feels like the first major acknowledgement of it after 2020, at least on a national level.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it though. I haven't seen anything.
Yeah, and I honestly, I haven't been looking either. So yeah, yeah.
Somebody said Target in the comment.
Don't be fooled by Target. I'll tell you that much. Never another one. And I think that's the other thing. Like, I think, you know, us on the panel, we have behind the scenes interactions with a lot of these big brands who forward facing. They look like they're doing all this stuff for the community, but they all do not want to pay up. They do not want to give money freely. It's always a battle.
What I wish would happen.
What'd you say?
What I wish would happen is they wouldn't do anything and just go, let me give money and support to the people who know what to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yep. Thank you so much. Shamika, you had a question. Did you want to come off mute to share? I'll go ahead and read your question. What techniques have y'all used to overcome or face imposter syndrome?
I feel like I have a really quick answer, so I'm just gonna throw them out there. Getting in the reps, like that whole 2020, the thing I learned is just like getting in the reps, learning how to vet people faster, and that gave me a lot more confidence. With design, it's the same thing. If you're a designer, you've got to get in those reps, got to get in those experiences with talking to clients. And the more you do that, the more you purposely put yourself in that situation, the more that imposter syndrome quiets down a little bit.
Yeah, I think my answer is similar to that. I mean, I think, you know, I know in design, because I've been doing it for a long time, I just don't give a damn anymore. I don't care what people think. So I walk in the office or, you know, in the calls, you know, and I just don't care anymore. And it's like, you know, I'm old though, you know, and I just, you get to a certain point also when you get older, you just don't give a damn. And that's also part of it too. But I think, like, you know, I've been in enough situations where, you know, I've been told that I've been, you know, rough around the edges, or I don't respond in certain ways. And I just got to the point that I'm most comfortable and I'm most able to do my best work when I'm me. You know, it's hard for me to have that double consciousness anymore, because it's just really, really difficult for me to do that. Like, I think before, when I was younger, I was doing that. And I just realized, you know, over the years how daunting that is on your mental. And once I just started to, like, you know, when I talk to people like I want to talk to them. And I'm not saying that I'm rude or anything like that. I'm not, but it just, you know, I wear my hats, I wear my shirts that I want to wear. I walk in and I talk the way I want to talk, and I use slang how I want to use it. If people don't understand it, they don't understand it. You know, they can ask me, but if they don't understand it, that's on them. I use my own terminology. And, you know, I just have found that people adjust, you know, and, you know, and they know that I'm not trying to be an a-hole, but I'm just being me. And I know that doesn't work for everyone. You know, people have their different ways of doing that, but for me, that's how I approach it. But it has come in like Terrence was saying, it's the reps over the years, you know, just dealing with that. And then at a certain point, becoming to where I am now, where it's just not, you know, something that I think about too much anymore. I've been able to sort of deal with that way.
And I was just going to add that if you're not able to be yourself in a space, then that space is not for you. So, you know, remove yourself, because at the end of the day, you want to be supported on being yourself. And it's really hard trying to be something you're not. And it's okay not knowing things. It's okay. I think one of the things that we're fed in this industry is that we're supposed to, like, know everything and know everybody and ask questions. You know, that's a sign of strength. And the curiosity of wanting to learn. I look at that as a sign of strength. And it's not about being the one who knows everything and how to fix it or how to accomplish blah, blah, blah. Because we're all learning. And if you come in with that mindset, with whatever space that you're navigating, then the ideas of being an imposter, it doesn't work. It's not important. So, and again, you want to be around people who are in that mindset of wanting to learn, because that is how we grow as a community. And that is how we create equity. That is how we could be more inclusive with our ideas. So.
And I just wanted to throw one, okay, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. I was just saying, thank you. Go ahead.
I was just going to say one more thing. Also, you've got to have those internal conversations with yourself and find out where that questioning is coming from also.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you so much. I was ordering the book. That's why I couldn't get to the other screen. So thank you all.
Much, Miriam. We're going to follow up on these questions in my MODA, but also give grace to the panelists and our special guest, Maurice Cherry, and our audience. And we're going to reel this in. We're so thankful to Maurice for phenomenal moderation tonight. Thank you so much, Malene, Maurice, Terrence. Your insights are just profound. So we're so grateful to all of our panelists. Thank you, Natalie. And thank you to all of our guests tonight for coming out. We're going to share these resources on my MODA, and also welcome you to shop the book on the indie bookstores that we shared in the chat. And also, if you can come in person to MODA, purchase in our bookstore, and also check out Full Circle Design Without End, which is about regenerative design and how designers are asking, how can we design with the natural world instead of trying to control it? So we implore you to check out the website if you're interested in more programming and maybe future programming from BEID contributors down the line. So we're thankful for everyone tonight. And Maurice, if you wanted to say anything else before we go, you're welcome to, but I think I'll wrap it here. Yeah, finite. Okay, good. All right, thank you so much. Have a great night, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, it was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.